Call the Public Works Committee meeting of the 28th. It's 28th to order. We should probably, for the television, identify ourselves.
Yeah, I'm Paul DeZiel, District 3 rep.
Jim Weber, District 4 and Committee Chair.
Deb Andrews, Public Works and Parks.
And I'm Michael Mraz. I'm the Director of Public Works and Parks for the City of Hudson.
Yeah. Newly minted, and this is our first official Public Works meeting with Michael here, so welcome. The next first item is the minutes from the meeting of this 31st. Any comments, Paul? You and I are going to get to play ping pong again, it looks like.
Yes, I was actually not present on that meeting. I was out of town, so they look great to me.
Thank you.
Well, what do we do when we don't have the votes to?
You just can do it. You can motion and you can second.
Yeah, I can motion to approve them.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, sir.
There we go.
Hey guys, I'm really sorry to do this, but I have to. Hey, Johnny.
The next item is the discussion possible action on the letter of engagement for the retaining wall at 125 9th Street.
All right.
So what do you have for us?
Yeah. So in your issue sheet, and I'm sure, Jim, you're probably fairly familiar with the 9th Street retaining wall.
Yeah. Tom gave me a
Okay.
took me there and gave me a.
Paul, you're fairly familiar with, this has been an ongoing issue for the past, 2 years. The resident there requested us take a look at it and repair the retaining wall, and it's kind of been kicked down the road a little bit. And from what I've found, and I've looked at kind of the correspondence between Tom and the resident and other council members, one of the previous meetings, Public Works Committee voted to get a LOE with the city engineer for engineering work for the retaining wall. And as I look at it, at the May Public Works Committee meeting, staff was directed to create a policy on retaining walls, because once we fix one wall, we set a precedence for others as well. And without a policy in place, I really don't feel comfortable proceeding at this time. So what I'm recommending is that I would take upon writing the policy. I've done some preliminary research over the last week, have gotten some copies from other communities. I would write a policy specific to the city of Hudson, which this board could review and pass, and then we could start improving some of these retaining wall issues that we've had in the community. It's funny that we talk about retaining walls, because there's 9th Street, there's Cooley Road. I just got an email from a gentleman on 2nd Street asking about his retaining wall as well. So for me, I want to feel comfortable in the decisions that we're making, that we're treating everybody the same instead of treating everybody on a individual basis. So that's kind of my recommendation to the board tonight, is to table this. Let me write a policy that I can bring back to a future board meeting, that you can look at, approve, amend, and that we can start from ground zero. And when these issues come up, we have exact policies that we can follow. So,
good. I would think I'd recommend that you speak with our lawyer, or Catherine, on this as well. Once you have something, and then you need to have that conversation to see where that takes us, because she's already concerned about the Cooley Road, about whether or not that's an accessible issue or not. Okay,
because I know, I think the planning and inspector's office was going to look into this as well. So I would run it by them, our lawyer, before we bring it back, just to make sure we have all the I's dotted and T's crossed, and then you can make your amendments as you see. But I think that's the best way to move forward. Let's have a policy in place that we can all follow, and we can all, this is on private property, this is what we do. This is on public right of way, this is what we do. This is, just so that we're all on the same page.
So That's excellent, because we do have a number of walls that sooner or later are going to be issues.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I think that's a great idea, and whatever leadership you can provide would be much appreciated for
Yep.
kind of getting that policy together. So.
Yep, absolutely. So I know timetable, I'd like to get something done this fall, based upon the review of the other staff members, within the next couple of meetings, I would be very hopeful that I would have a policy in place to present. And I think coming to this committee first and getting it approved, I don't know if you would recommend taking it to council. That would be up to you, or we do an internal policy that we would follow. I don't know how the city of Hudson has handled that in the past, but
I think Kathy will have some answers for us on that.
Yeah. So, okay.
And I think that's a really great precedence to set, is some more policy type decisions. I think that many situations occur where if we did have a clear policy in place with how we should handle each situation, and there's no better time to write a policy is when an occasion or incident arrives, that we look at that and say, hey, what can we do better next time this happens? And so I'm really a procedural gal, and I think that that's a really great idea. So thanks for suggesting that.
Yep. All right.
So you think at our next meeting that you'll have a draft, or are we later than that?
September 25th?
September 25th is our next meeting. I'd be hopeful that we would have something by then to review.
At
Nice.
least give us an update
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
you're at.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
An update for sure, so
Yep.
update next meeting.
And then, I know, the city's looking at hiring a city engineer, and maybe some of the engineering costs can be deferred, with his position, where we could save on engineering costs as well. So you hate to kick the can down the road again, because this has been going on for a couple of years, but, with those two pieces in place, I think it's beneficial to, just table it, let's get a policy and move on from there as a city, because like you said, it's going to come up time after time after time as these walls continue to fail, so.
Yeah, I was, that was one of my concerns about the letter of engagement. We're getting hit with a number of large expenses like this, and I think we experienced last year, or last several years, that the city engineer would help us with that significantly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so do we need to make a motion on that to postpone it?
No, it should be fine.
Scanning through those some really good pictures. The next item, anybody else need a copy?
Is that?
This
I
is
don't
the
think I
next
need a
item,
copy.
yeah.
I printed it. Do you want?
Discussion and possible action on
That's fine, I
improvements
didn't
to
know if you wanted
the
to.
Carmichael Road and Crestview Drive traffic signal cabinet.
Yes, so this is dealing with the intersection at Crestview and Carmichael. From what I understand, that there was a study done at the intersection of Hanley and Carmichael, where the engineer's recommendation was to do flashing yellow signal and upgrade on the stenciling. From that study, Carmichael corridor study has been initiated, and so what we're recommending here tonight is, putting that intersection on hold and using some of those monies that were designated for that intersection and appropriating them to the Crestview and Carmichael intersection, where we have a failing utility box and ongoing maintenance issues. And talking to staff, it's the technology is original, and it was placed back in 1991 on the issue sheet. It's the existing cabinet, so a lot of old technology, it's a loop system, whereas if we were to upgrade that cabinet along with the software, it'd be a video detection system, which is kind of what DOT is kind of the standard, and it would allow for the flashing yellow and any future improvements that would go along Carmichael. I would be able to handle those improvements as well at that intersection. So what I'm requesting tonight is just to transfer funds from the Hanley-Carmichael intersection just up to the Crestview Carmichael intersection, improve that cabinet that is failing, and get that fixed here this fall.
So
I'll take
I
any
had
questions.
a couple questions.
Yeah.
So that, the funds then available would be 49,000,
Correct.
and we need 45 of them.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
so what,
Based upon the quotes that we got, so it was $9,000 for installation of the wiring, the video detection system. Everything else would be for components, materials, wires, videos, the cabinet itself.
so what, just maybe this is my naivety, but what happens to that extra $4,000?
It would just roll over to.
Just rolls over?
Yeah,
Okay.
if there's anything left over, then we would say, yeah, let's roll it over to put it possibly in the flashing yellow, turn left, or whatever.
For down the road?
Yep.
So I have one more question, or just a piece of information I'd like to share, that I have been hearing from a few residents, not necessarily if in my district or not, I don't know where they live, but they're like, what's up with the timing on the lights on Carmichael? Everyone's like, I hit every red every single time, like every single time. So why is that? And will this help that at all?
So it can help it. We can dictate with the video system. You can change how often it changes, the light changes, so
Okay.
we can make the flows better. And I know once we get the Carmichael study back, we'll be able to, delineate or change signal timing as well based upon traffic studies and traffic flows.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of the outcomes that we're looking to get out of that Carmichael study as well, is this light should be red for X number of seconds, this one should be red for X number of seconds, so we get better flow through that, especially during the busy times, because it can get backed up quite easily. So upgrading this technology will help assist in that. Yep.
Maybe a piece to the puzzle?
Yep, it is.
Okay, well, that's
And
good news.
I know from the recommendations in the original study done on Hanley and Carmichael on that intersection, the engineer did suggest that any future improvements to any intersection on Carmichael go to video detection, because it is upgraded technology and allows us as staff more play with the system. So this would definitely assist with that.
Good.
Yep.
Glad to hear.
Yep.
It sounds like a good idea, Michael. My only question is, so we're taking the money from what was going to be the Hanley Carmichael flashing yellow light. So, and Deb might be for you too.
Yeah.
So what happens to that other intersection if we do this? Is there?
We would just have to keep it, we would leave it on here and just request the funds for that, because I think based on some of those, we didn't have enough anyhow to do that.
Okay.
So it's a lot more
Okay.
expensive than the 34,000. So that would be something that we
Okay.
have to get costs.
We have to rebudget or something in a
Yes.
future year or something like
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah, that's, and there was some question about that approach anyway. Is this the right thing to do? The flashing yellow light is new here in Hudson, and we've heard comments that maybe that's not the right, so it's used extensively in Minnesota, and seems to work fairly well there. And my concern was, are we sure that this is going to be, this is the latest in technology, and it's going to cover whatever we need to do for the Carmichael interchange, at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, there's always new things coming out. So,
Right.
but this will take us from 1991 to
For the next 20 years, 25 years.
2018
Yeah.
and beyond.
Yeah.
Entertain a motion for this.
Yeah, I would make a motion to relocate the funds from the Carmichael and Hanley intersection to the Carmichael and Crestview intersection with the technology recommended by staff.
I will second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we move ahead with the transfer of funds for the purchase and installation of a new control system. Is that the right terminology? For Carmichael and
Crestview.
Crestview. Well, I think it was Cooley. So, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Public safety will be happy that we're doing this. It's been on their agenda for quite some time.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. The next item is a proposed schedule for Public Works facility tour. 5 different locations, starting, what's room 211? Is this 211?
211's right over there because
okay.
they have court and everything, so we'll just meet.
Okay. So, anything you'd like to say about this?
No, we'll just, we'll bring the committee to our various locations where Public Works houses equipment and runs operations out of. We'll go to the north side, start there, then we have a garage just to the west of that, within a few blocks. We'll come down and look at, I believe...
St. Croix Street and the Road Club are leased buildings.
Yep, leased buildings where we have possible location to do a new park facility if we ever do decide to move on from the, starts with a B.
Buckeye?
Buckeye Garage.
first.
I'm learning yet. I'm learning. Give me some time.
Well,
I'm
that's
learning
all right.
too.
And then we'll finish up kind of at the old golf course and look at some of the facilities over there as well where we have equipment stored. So just give you an idea of some the equipment that we have, the space needs that we have. So in the future, when we do decide to pursue a different building, that you kind of have an idea of some of the needs of the department. So, and it give you a chance to kind of look at kind of the equipment and the facilities and answer any questions that you would have. So looking forward to it. I think, I'll be attending, Deb will be there, but I'm also going to ask Kevin Soltis, our lead foreman for the Public Works Department, to be there as well, just because he has a lot of the knowledge. He's been there for a number of years. He kind of knows some of the needs as well, where I'm new and still learning, so, yeah.
Okay, now, Tom had originally
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
said he would be
Yep.
there.
I think Tom will be there as well.
Tell the,
Yep, absolutely.
whatever, the
Great.
rest of the history.
Yep.
Oh, this is a public meeting. This is going to be a public meeting, so that's the only reason, the way that the 3 of us can be together. And the council said, can we come? And I said, it's a public meeting, and I can't keep you from coming, but I'm not inviting you. So it's because I want the focus to be on the 3 of us really understanding and working with Michael, really building that relationship and understanding. If I overstepped, let me know and I'll retract that. Don't
I
say- tell them they're invited, but-
tend to agree. I'd like to be able to have your attention focused on us so we can, feel free to ask as many questions as we need and get direct answers. And if other people want to attend, I think it's great and fine, but maybe they're more along for the ride than they are the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
We talked a little bit about maybe doing a little bit of a summary for each of the sites of what's there prior to
Oh, that would be-
meeting,
that
so
would be
that
good.
you'd each have what equipment's stored and that maybe would help. And then
Yeah.
maybe after each location, before we adjourn, you would just ask questions then instead of asking as we kind of go along.
That'd be really good. Yeah.
Yep.
What happens there? What's the size, the square footage,
Yep.
how old it is,
Yeah, well, I'll try to do that.
how many vehicles we have stored where.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that that helps
Yep.
address the question that you've raised
Right.
about Hagan Street.
So that agenda will be, obviously this week. I'll get it out. The summary might not get to you till Tuesday, but
That's fine.
okay,
Yeah.
or
Of
even
course.
that, or that morning or something else. So,
Okay.
I think we need a motion to approve this next meeting.
I don't think so.
We don't need, no, Deb says we don't.
She's the
So,
boss.
anyway, we're all in agreement anyway.
Ah,
Because it's just a meeting, really.
yeah, it's just
So,
notice of a meeting.
Informational,
Just
yeah.
that you're okay with the schedule, and we're good with that.
Okay.
Okay.
The next item was the Hudson Urban Forestry Board meeting minutes. I thought they're quite extensive, a lot of information about ash trees and all the things that are going on there. I was impressed with the amount of activity that's there. And well, you're on that committee, so is there anything that we should pay particular attention to?
I wanted to make just one note. I assume that my tardiness made it possible for you to just approve the previous minutes from our last meeting. So there's just one word missing, and that is that the average cost to treat an ash tree is $8 to $10 per diameter inch.
Oh, okay.
And so that should be just a small clarification. And I don't think I saw that actually in the Hudson Urban Forestry Board meeting minutes, that particular figure, but
That's for homeowners?
that's for homeowners, and the city pays considerably less because of the contract agreement.
Okay. So we move
The
to...
city pays less because we purchased the equipment and all the materials, and it was part of our grant for,
Oh,
I guess, I don't know what our costs would end up being. Maybe Michael can figure that out, or they, but that is part of our
not
grant
important.
money.
Yeah,
That's how.
yeah. So people have been working on that.
Be kind of interesting,
Since I...
So if, just a clarification, so if a homeowner has a problem with the ash tree, like what would they do? They would go to,
So they would contact a private company to treat their tree if they deemed it necessary, if it's worth salvaging or saving. We're getting out some publications right now. They can go on our website. There's some good literature on there as far as trying to walk homeowners through the step-by-step process, whether or not they decide to remove it or replace it, kind of that kind of thing. So go to our website and look for that information. Otherwise, we have and this was going to be later on in the notes, but we're having a public access TV event on Thursday. Ken Holman, myself, are going to discuss EAB response within the city of Hudson. I know there's some literature being drafted right now. Tim
Hall is drafting
a brochure to be available for residents as well. So as we get more and more into this and people ask more questions, we'll have material available for them.
okay,
So yeah.
great.
Yep.
Perhaps the first thing, let's take care of the change to the minutes. Since I made the motion originally, I move that we make the correction that Sarah has brought up. Is that
Yeah, I would second that, yeah.
all right? So moved and seconded that we
I'll
approve
figure it out.
the minutes as... I thought, well, one thing it was really interesting, that items D and E under item 2, that there's areas where there are high density of underground utilities. And I'm wondering what our general knowledge is of that.
Well,
If the building inspector does he have, whoever gives permits, and which ties in the next item about permits being given to plant in the right-of-ways. So how's that whole process tie together, that information and that process tie together?
from my limited and new understanding, from sitting in on that meeting, both of our first meeting at
Right.
Hudson Urban Forestry Board, was that there are, in particular, boulevards that have, like the center line of Carmichael would be a perfect example, because underneath that is tons of utilities, or are tons of utilities, and we wouldn't want to go planting a row of trees there, because in the event of the need of repair, plus the trees can actually damage, it's my understanding, all the things that are buried underneath.
Yeah.
So we would need to avoid large plantings that would have roots that would interfere with anything that's buried underneath places that have a lot of things going on underneath.
And I think it's the responsibility of staff as well to review any site plans that come across our desks and identify those areas that, hey, there are a lot of utilities in here, maybe you shouldn't be planting trees when it's just loaded. So I don't think there's a policy in place or anything like that to flag those areas, but I think just internally, if the Urban Forestry Board wants us to draft some procedures where we would, discourage the planting, because I do believe there currently is a permit to plant a tree in the boulevard.
Yep.
We can follow that practice where, the city can go out and locate in front of their yard before they plant the tree, and if there's more than one utility, or depending upon the size of the utility, maybe we would discourage the property owner from planting a tree in that area. So
This would probably be important to include in this information that you're putting together. That, hey, by the way, you can't plant something there without permission in the right-of-way.
Yep, without attaining a permit.
Over the years, it has caught on, you know, because the urban forestry, that was one of their first things that they did, actually, was come up with the permit and, you know, the guidelines for planting, and, you know, so I guess we don't have as many as you think anymore as far as planting in the boulevards. But like you said about the site plans, the urban forester's been really adamant about getting involved more with how they can get involved, I should say, with the development and planning part of it, so that he could look at it, the engineers, to try to keep the trees out of the boulevards or back from the utilities. So that's been on their agenda for several years.
So is that something that that we need to bring up to, well, certainly to Mike? But I mean, he's kind of the control point for that. So
Yes.
I would assume we don't need to go any further than that, or?
And the other part of that, good part, is that they've talked about helping with maybe some of the landscaping in those developments to continue working on the, you know, tree diversity, so that they're not just planting a whole row of
Maples.
a tree that maybe it's not on the recommended tree list
Right.
for urban forestry. So.
Or too many of the same kind of tree. We've paid that price twice now.
Yes.
So
Yes. Just a couple other updates from the Urban Forestry Board. You know, we discussed the Urban Forestry Grant, completing that this 2018 cycle, the tree trek, planting some of the remainder gravel bed nursery trees, and then finishing up the ash tree injections. I know JJ was finishing up with them. Brings me to applying for the 2019 grant that's due in October. I'll be applying for that coming up here in the next month. I'll hopefully get some monies to help with fight the EAB bug now that it's here in the city. And then finally, at our next meeting, we're going to be discussing the budget, which will be presented at the September 25th meeting. So we'll be drafting a budget for presentation to this committee coming up as well. So
I would hope what I consider Hudson's strong program so far in addressing this, trying to be
Yes.
ahead of it.
Hudson's been
would
very
help us-
proactive and
help us with getting additional grants, but
Yep, Tom and the Urban Forestry Board has been ahead of the game. They've been preparing for the EAB for a number of years and sitting in a pretty good position. Yeah.
Can I ask what, there's a term tree tracks, new tree trek is being planted? I'm just not familiar with the term. Is it a?
So it's a tree identifier, and it's on a stake. It's probably 3 feet tall.
Okay.
It's made out of plastic, and it's near different trees, different tree species, and it has a QR code on it where people can learn more about the tree and where it's come from, native. It gets this high, it produces this kind of fall
Gotcha.
color.
Okay.
So there's a specific location that I'm not aware of. I believe.
Yeah, there's specific, well, the first tree trek was Lakefront Park,
Okay.
down on the trail, and then we went up Vine Street is another one. Vine Street doesn't have the stakes, though. They have the tags, I believe.
Okay.
They have more of the tag that if you walk by there, you can scan it on your phone or, you know, do it that way. And then the last one is the new historic district up by the Willow River School. And that was part of the grant and the public outreach, and they're going to continue, you know, to keep planting and working on that to expand that one. So that's,
Yep.
Thank you.
maybe at the next meeting, Michael can bring the stake and you can show, and we'll have new brochures hopefully by then too, so
Yep.
we can continue to keep the urban forestry, I think, updates on here just because of the EAB, and I think that'll be helpful, so, instead of quarterly, so.
at this point, I want to apologize. We have a guest in the room. Is there anything specific that you're here to?
Just listening.
And your name is?
Johnny Montorio,
Okay.
Hudson.
Anything more on the Urban Tree Forestry Board?
Well, I did want to mention just briefly that Ken has retired from his day job. So our chair has more time and renewed energy for our efforts, which is very, very exciting.
Perfect timing.
Volunteer.
Just as they announced the discovery of the EAB, and he retires.
Exactly. Just when we need him the most, he's going to be able to step on up.
Doesn't always work that way.
I know.
The next item is an update on the MS4 annual report. And what we have is the letter stating that our time to complete our grant has been extended to the end of the year. So I guess that raises a question, are we going to get there?
Well,
To fully utilize all the funds, that's the...
yeah, and I think, so it is good that it was extended, of course. The grant amount was for $73,500. Up until this point, we've been reimbursed for $34,480. So,
Can you repeat that number,
Yep.
please?
full grant amount was $73,500. Reimbursed $34,480,
We've got a lot of money to
so
spend.
approximately half. I'm
Here's the components of it.
there's different components that we have, that we can spend money towards. And I think my goal is over the course of the next week is to get in touch with Eric from SEH, who's been kind of the lead on the engineer that's been drafting and keeping track of this grant. Getting on the same page with him and seeing what we need to do to complete the grant to get it finished by December 31st. I know there's different components to it. I'm not, I'm familiar with what MS4 is. I just don't know what the nuts and bolts are of it. So it's just me to get a learning process, and that's kind of my goal here over the next week and a half to get more involved and learn more about it. So we can use all those monies because they're sitting there for us to use, and we want to use them. So absolutely. Yep.
So I'm wondering, is this like, obviously it's the rainwater runoff, right?
Yep.
But
Stormwater.
is it trying to assess like chemical levels in certain areas, or is it trying to figure out like what we're getting a baseline kind of for the city? Is that
Well, there's pollutant loading, so it is testing of the sites and seeing how much pollutants are in there. It's the management plan, so vegetation management, taking a backhoe and removing all the silt and putting in a new layer of sediment to filter. It's public outreach. That's a big component of the MS4 is that educating the public, not putting grass clippings out on the road, not raking your leaves out on the road because it all washes down into the stormwater ponds and it creates sediment and it adds pollutants to the water. And then there's, stormwater ordinance, which I believe was already passed. So there's different components to the MS4 that each city over a population of 10,000 has to show that we're reaching, that we're accomplishing.
And all that sounds really important
Yes.
to me. And I know that you're brand new, and Tom, I think, has been, off for some extended time, and I'm wondering if that's maybe where we're behind a little bit. But the other big question I have is, and as you get into your job, maybe think about is, do we have adequate staffing in Public Works to handle the MS4 with all the other stuff? It seems like my understanding is it's a newer area and it's been a growing area, and I just don't know if we have enough kind of horsepower in a sense to keep working with it. So I don't know if that's part of the equation where if we had more people, would it be easier to do some of these? So I'm not the finance guy for the city, but I think it's worth us thinking about, what do you guys need in the future? So.
Yeah, and for my short time that I've been here, one of the things that I'll be looking at and that I have seen is some of the staffing levels in certain areas within the Public Works Department, how we could use a couple more bodies to help, implement some of these plans, because only having one person implement this plan or one person doing the entire urban forestry for the entire city is just not really feasible at this point, moving forward. So definitely I see the need already, and I will be addressing that in future budget cycles. So, yep.
Yeah, I think we're ready to, from my understanding of it, is that we've been doing the planning and the measuring and the understanding where all our storm drains are and that piece. Now we're ready to start taking some action into actually reducing the amount of pollutants that are going down there and measuring it. So there's a measuring component that I don't totally understand as how are we doing that, but it's in there. But I think it would be good if sometime, I don't know if next month is appropriate, or at least perhaps the month after, to have Eric come in and give us an update on that. He did that, what was that, 4 or 5 months ago perhaps? And that was quite enlightening. I learned a lot about.
That'd be really good for all of us here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
So,
definitely
so
schedule
we're
that.
all on track.
Was that
with-
during a Public Works
Yes,
meeting?
yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, we'll get that
We
done.
need to be looking at 2019. I think your comment's very appropriate about do we have, it requires extra work being done. Where do we have the staffing to do that?
Right.
What do we need?
Right,
So
yep,
this is the right time.
great.
Okay, if no one has any objections, because I'm concerned about getting lost on the 10-year program, if we would go to the last item, is review of the Public Works projects.
Yes.
And you tell us the things, significant things that we need.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of run down a list of projects that we've been undertaking here within the last couple of weeks. Zappa has started our stormwater repairs that we have contracted out with him earlier this spring. He was up on Division and Second, and he's kind of making his way through town, making those repairs. Called Farner. They are our contractor doing our flex seal and crack filling for this year. They're going to be in here late September, early October, doing that project. Just talked to the salesman a couple days ago. So they're making their way, kind of starting in Minnesota and making their way to the east. And we're going to be in that timetable, late September, early October. That'll be nice to get that project completed. Hanley Road, met with the engineers, the inspector on site. Basically, there's just a punch list to go over, which includes some concrete work to some aprons, couple of curb and gutter areas that were cracked during construction, and then restoration of the boulevard. The grass has not taken real well up in that area, and the company will be coming back in and doing reseeding of that area as well. So those are kind of the big punch list items left on Hanley Road. Munch Bunch is back in Prospect Park. I don't know if you've noticed the fence is up again, so they're back for round number 2, I believe. This will be their last round this season, and so they'll be there. I don't know how long. Deb, do you know?
They didn't really say how
No.
long. Weeks, I think.
So they're back in Prospect Park, and we'll look to, we'll meet with the owner and the company and kind of go over their progress made, and we'll make an update at the next Public Works Committee meeting, see if we want to continue that relationship in the future. And then lastly, with summer coming in to an end, most of our summer help is leaving us, so we're kind of back to a skeleton crew, a full-time staff. A couple of seasonals will stick around until November, which will help us tremendously because, of course, the grass doesn't grow just because summer's over. But we'll try to keep the parks looking beautiful and the streets clean and for this fall and all the festivities going on around town. So, yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I was just up on Hanley Road, and really like how that feels. And I've had a few comments from people about they just feel safer. Things, and no complaints so far.
Good.
So that's
Shocking.
Turned out really nice.
shouldn't have said anything. Okay, that takes us back to the 10-year capital works project list. When did
So
we
the last-
start this? You want to walk through how this came about?
Oh, I don't know.
And just
Well,
give
this
us a
came
little
about
history.
several years ago that the previous chairman, John, we originated this so that because instead of talking about it, we just thought, let's put it on the list so that we don't lose sight of it. Different things that we talk about. It may never go anywhere. It may stay on the list for the next 20 years, but hopefully that. But that's where it came about. So as we go along in the 1920, this will help with your decisions making for capital requests. I did add the trails to it, and I also added the retaining walls. And as we go along, we can add that on here. It's kind of just a tasks and
Keep us
to
organized.
keep us a little bit more organized. And the dollar amounts, Michael, we had talked about that a little bit. And for instance, the sidewalks, we've had the same amount forever. Maybe that needs to be changed, and he'll be looking and working with the engineer and trying to get some better costs on some of these items.
So that's what it's a record-keeping system, and we can add things to this project. It's a planning system for our large expenditures, our capital improvement dollars that we need to generate.
So is there a certain time of year that the Public Works Committee makes changes to this document, or is it kind of just ongoing? Or
We have kind of just really just kind of started using it
Okay.
over the last probably year or so.
Okay.
Just, I think going into capital, the capital projects, yeah, we can update it and then, use it as a tool.
Okay.
And
So for the purpose of the board, I mean, do we want to set certain times throughout the year where we want to review this document as projects come up and come to mind that we can add to it or take off of?
Yeah.
Maybe set biannually, look at it, because you really don't want to look at it every month, because I don't think, it would be a little bit of overkill, but to set it up maybe in the winter time and then again in the fall, where we can kind of review what we've done this past year, if we want to carry some things over and so on and so forth. So maybe if that sounds.
So late winter coming into the spring
Yep.
maintenance and construction.
I guess if something comes up big, we can just, obviously, we'll just add it on there, and
Yeah.
it'll be on there, and,
It's at least it's a category where we have needs,
Yeah.
where we have to
Yeah. And I think
improve things, I guess.
the purpose of the document itself is to look out, years 2, 3, 4, so you kind of have a roadmap as far as where you want to budget some of those bigger items towards. So, it's not something that, hey, we're going to budget for this next year, because in fact, if you look at 2019, there's kind of already a column already filled out for what some of the bigger expenditures are going to be. So we're going to look at, years 2020, 2021, so on and so forth, kind of get an idea.
So, like in the park board, for instance, if they go through every park, and it's kind of similar to this. And I guess just so that people don't get confused, that this does not, just because it's on the list doesn't mean that it's going to happen. I mean, just because it's on the list, it's just, and I think that it's more for staff and for
Staff and committees.
yeah.
So my question is, how does this relate to the budgeting process for the city council? Like, is it, and Jim, you would know more, the veteran here. So is it, my understanding, the fall is when the budget starts getting rolled out for the following year?
That's correct.
So what I'm thinking is we should probably be reviewing this in the summer,
Okay.
so that we're ahead of that game and we can make some proposals. That my guess was have to go through finance and have to go to the council or whatnot. So maybe the summer and then the winter, like you're saying, as
Oh, yeah,
opposed to
definitely
the,
so.
because we're going to be behind probably if we do the fall. I'm thinking,
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
definitely
and-
say June, July, August, and that's
By
kind of what we
August or
have been
something.
on, and kind of been doing that over the months, but yeah, that's going to be really, a big item.
I get what
And then
you're
as he
saying.
starts getting numbers, once we start getting numbers in there for some of these, the city's costs for Second Street, for instance, and things, we can start dropping those in, just so that, the finance director will be, she actually has this, she asked for it too, so, because this helps her too, so she doesn't forget to put something on.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
And I was going to say, the trails, pathways, improvements, is that, is that a new thing that was added since last time?
Yes.
Okay,
Do
so
you
I
wanna
wanted to
kind
say
of
thank you for, I think, Jim, that was you, I'm guessing, but I think that's very good to have on there, so.
Yeah, what we ran up against was Hagan Street Trail needs to be redone, but the funds weren't available.
Right.
We tried to take them from the sidewalk funding, and that was frowned on by the council. Wasn't really very supportive of that. So we need to recognize we need to look at this. It's an entirely separate entity that we have been totally ignoring for a long time. So we need
We
to.
kind of talked about that today, remember when we were talking about the $150,000, that's based on, you know, the cost that it came in at. But there's also sidewalks, because we never really reallocated the money, so there still is money in there for sidewalks. So that would be like a brand-new request for 1920 for the funding for Hagan Street Trail. So that'll be something that the council will have to either keep in the capital requests or not, or change something in the sidewalk, or wherever, reduce something possibly somewhere else if you have to.
I think along that same line, we have no real plan for maintenance of those sidewalks, and I'm hoping that you've got some background that's going to help us with that. Say, okay, we need to be seal coating these sidewalks just like we do with the streets.
Trails,
Doing
yes,
that.
trails.
The
Absolutely.
trails, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we typically what I've done in the past is I've tied in trails to seal coating or crack filling projects. So I'll budget, you know, X number of dollars towards the streets, and then I'll have $20,000 left over to do trails, crack filling trails, you know, that kind of thing. So, like you said, you got a trail is just like a road. You got to maintain it, and just like a road. So to appropriate some money towards that will increase the life of them, and people will be able to enjoy them. So
The Bike Ped Committee is also quite interested in this one, and myself and another guy are supposed to be looking at all the trails, creating the index of here are the trails, here's who owns, which, because many of them are private. And so we don't know where private is and public is. Some places it goes back and forth even. So we just need to totally understand to have that picture and make it part of our system.
Yep.
So
When we say part of our system, you know, I know I've been hearing a little bit of discussion about getting some GIS software in here so that we could have the data permanently attached to an actual map, so we can, you know, easily access, you know, the facts, like when was this resurfaced last, or we can attach pictures to it that says, you know, this is the state of it right now, and we got to put it on the plan. Where are we at with that? Do we know?
I haven't done anything with it.
Okay.
We're not probably that part of it, but
Yet?
we have I mean, it could be we gave them the Whistler. That's how it,
Whistler program?
The Whistler program and the pavement ratings. That's how they're kind of rating the trails right now based on that, and they're kind of creating a little bit of their own.
Okay.
Because it's not really a street, it's a trail, they just weren't ready to prepare it, but I don't know about the GIS on
Well, I didn't know, like, when Jim said he was going to be part of the team that
trails.
kind of documents the status on some of these, where does that documentation go? I guess that's my question.
Yep. And it would be, I mean, perfect world, and I think we can get there, absolutely, because other communities do it too. When it was built, any maintenance done, it was done in 2015, you know, when should the next maintenance be done, you know, projecting program out into the future. So there are programs out there that we can certainly download that software and data into, where we can just bring it up just like that and find it. So
Right, you can do it just like the state Whistler program that he can use now. He could pull up all the streets and it'll tell you, you know, what condition it is, what the rating is, and he can put a dollar amount on it,
Okay.
you know, based on the recent current prices. But yeah,
does the
it's a good.
the sidewalk map that Mike has, does that include trails, or do you know? So we could use that then. All right.
Yeah.
It includes just the cities? Doesn't include
It
private?
shows, you know, which trail map I'm talking about. It shows trails. It shows all the sidewalks.
we could create a map that would differentiate public from private trails, I would think, fairly easily.
Yeah, easily.
So that's just, probably that's a document then that we start with and just start walking and riding some of these trails.
That's I think that's all that is on there right now is public
Okay.
trails and sidewalks.
We'll have to look.
Okay.
We'll get in touch with the planning department.
Okay, so back to your question, this does drive our budget. When we look at what do we need for capital improvement, Michael's going to have his other issues, but here, what's our capital improvement budget? Then this is the big big driver for that.
Okay.
Plus anything else that is surprises that happen. But hopefully most of it is contained in here, and we're actually being able to project that. One of the issues may become that we'll need to think about is we've been at a steady amount of money we've spent for maintenance, and whether is that sufficient. Do we need to start, because it's talking about borrowing. We borrow this money basically for capital improvement projects. And tell me if I get this wrong, but we've been borrowing the same amount of money for quite a period of time, and we have more streets. We have things like trails now that we're starting to talk about. That I think are we moving ahead at the right pace? Is the question. The other piece that relates to that is that we talked last year and earlier this year about and this now that we don't have a city engineer and John isn't here to help push us along the way, but a program for all the streets. We've kind of looked at.
Yep, that's on here. That's called pavement analysis, and that's the streets, and that's what we'll be working towards with the engineer when he comes on board. Michael will work with him to try to get that going. Whether, obviously it's not going to probably be able to do it in-house, but a lot of it could be.
Do we have a sense of when that hire is going to take place for the engineer?
The closing is the 31st, so this is for Friday.
Okay, so it could be in September, basically,
Yep,
when they do the hire? Okay.
Yep.
So this is just a suggestion to think about. So when we talked about that pavement analysis, and so I'm seeing one of these things is not like the other. Remember that song? So we've got concrete projects listed. So street projects, street maintenance, trails, alley improvements, sidewalk, curb and gutter, street lighting. So the engineering study, that is not like the other categories on this list. I think that those items belong underneath their rightful category.
Okay.
So pavement analysis for streets, so that would say pavement analysis engineering study, or engineering study for pavement analysis, and that pavement is with streets. Or maybe, and also under the trails that are pavement. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think
update plans and specs. What project does that pertain to?
The reason I think it's listed on here is because it would more than likely be bonded money. That's kind of why it's on here. If the finance director felt that we'd have to do it out of an operating fund, then I guess she'd pull it.
No, I mean,
we can move this
I'm just
forward.
saying, like, update plans and specs for what?
Okay.
For which, if it's, the street lighting could have plans and specs.
Yeah, we can add,
So that would move to street lighting, plans and specs for street lighting,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? The
So if
needs
it's,
assessment for
update the plans
facilities. That's just that particular category doesn't really.
Need to be there.
Okay.
It needs to, each one of those items needs to fall within the appropriate project.
Needs assessment facilities could go to public works facilities.
Correct.
Right.
You're just
Okay,
eliminating.
yeah, we can move it around. That's
I'm
fine.
just a suggestion
Yep.
to make it really clear, like which category those engineering studies fall within.
Yeah.
That would be helpful in my mind.
Okay. We can work on that because, and then.
I just think that any document like this should be living, breathing, and always improving,
Yeah.
and becoming more and more clear so that everyone who looks at it is like, oh, I totally understand this spreadsheet.
Right. So then moving forward, and Jim, I don't know, as the chair, how would you like to, because we're all fairly new, Paul, Sarah, you're fairly new to the committee, is when you think would be the appropriate time to review, like really dig into this document, maybe project out, 3-4 years, would that be this winter sometime, bring this back?
Yeah, that's probably correct. The summer, July, August time would be looking very hard at the next year or
Next
2
year.
years
Yep.
for the
Yep.
budget purposes. And then in the winter, when we have sometimes a little less to do.
Right.
Then we have time to actually say, let's really take a hard look at our next level of streets, for example. And include that as a possible category, something in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes
And it's going to
sense.
take a lot of coordination, once I do get the Whistler program running, we're looking at our road ratings, we're basing our decisions off, the worst roads, the utility department will have a say in some of those streets that we're going to do total reconstructs on compared to just a mill and overlay or a seal coat. So there'll be a lot of coordinations, communications with other departments as far as what projects we want to do a complete reconstruct or just do normal maintenance on, and so we'll all learn together as we move forward.
How about, since I'm hearing that this is rather new and it's a new tool for the department, maybe we just look at quarterly for starters?
Okay.
And then with hopes of maybe just letting it be a really great tool for you guys to use, and then the committee weigh in on it, twice a year.
Yeah.
But I think while it's fresh, while it's really new, new to you, new to us, that we review quarterly for a little bit until it's really solid.
Yeah, because
I don't know.
in the
Just
past,
that's just a what,
Yeah.
maybe, what if, I don't know what you guys think.
did Tom make recommendations to the committee to add things on here? Or was it vice versa? Did the committee make recommendations to add, or was it kind of both?
I think it was a mix.
Mix.
Yeah, it was kind of a mix.
Mostly Tom,
Okay.
It was kind of
but,
a mix.
I think.
Well, and it helped, I guess it was just, I kind of started it with John, just because we're always talking about this and that, and it's like, well, didn't we talk about that? What year are we doing that? And so it was just kind of more to
Yeah.
just
Well,
put
I
it
think
on
it's a
paper.
great tool, and
It
we
may-
just need
there's-
to, every tool that I've come up with in my company, it only works if you continue to use it.
To use it,
So,
right.
um,
And this
I think
kind of sat in the
more
back
better
burner for a
while it's
long
fresh.
time because it was more helpful probably internally for me. And
Yeah,
and then it
Brenda.
became,
Brenda.
It's time that the whole committee was more in tune to this worksheet. So it's really a driver.
Right.
It's a huge driver for us, so.
And, even if it's not on this spreadsheet, maybe there's another worksheet to the workbook that has more notes about each of these things, or, like for example, various sidewalks. Where'd the $75,000 come from? Oh, well, see, that's based on inspections, but maybe that's not the best example, but, just something that says the $230,000 for crack fill. Just a footnote that says this was the actual amount spent in 2013, so we just carried that forward for perpetuity.
Sure.
Right.
Or just so we know, what is the foundation of this number? I have no history.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what that's what we were talking earlier about, was it says 80, 80, 80, just the same with
Right, right.
crack filling, 230. It was always, that was all based on years back
Right.
on
So a
the,
footnote, or, you could have
Yeah.
a separate tab to the same workbook that just gives some of that we could have access to on the drive
so
or
that
something.
230 could change to 350.
Or 150.
Or less.
Right, right.
Or 150. So what has...
Footnotes are great, just
Right.
like any budget has assumptions, so.
So the crack filling was usually based on, Tom would meet with Varner or somebody, and go through, and that's why it was reduced. Plus, we needed money in our mill and overlay project, so we just it's always reallocated and saying, well, we need more money, so we're going to have to reduce that this year. And that's kind of how it was. So we may need it, but because another project that's more important.
Got it.
So,
Yeah, it's, and you probably already thought of this, but like in a quarterly review, we should probably take one section and, because we're in a learning stage on this, and really dig down into each one of these, looking at the origin of the funding, looking at the project itself, why is it on the list, and what's the priority, is it,
That
is
would
this the
probably
correct priority?
Help you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just so we all have.
But just
really-
take a section of this, so we, like, I can see the next meeting, street projects and reconstructions, since that's our largest dollar item, we should probably get that one under
Well,
our
I think we're
belts.
going to be hitting it hard in September because we have to come up with a budget, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're going to have going in, I was actually looking at last year's information from Brenda, and I think she's shown you that a few times.
Okay.
You know, you'll start talking about the capital projects, and then she'll prepare everything, and then she'll discuss the cost, and then what other funding is out there, and if it's going to be used for bonds or notes, and, you know, whatever the financial part is
Okay.
we don't really get that involved. Michael will, and you know, you will, but she has the funding sources and says, well, we're short this much money, and then obviously they got to find other funding, so.
All right. That's sufficient for that, but I think the next meeting, we should really, let's look at the street projects and go through as much as we can on that.
Well, we pretty much know that Vine Street's the project.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yes, what's left? That's most of it, isn't it? So, but okay, where are we with Vine Street? You know, what's the status of that
We're in
project?
the preliminary still.
Yeah, but I mean, let's look at that, you know, on that one, what's the?
Kind of the schedule, get the schedule
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
You can get an update on where we're at with
yep,
that.
yep.
Anything else? Any projects, anything, items for the next agenda?
I think our next agenda is the tour meeting. Isn't
Yeah, it is, the tour.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to try not to,
So that one's taken care of.
unless something comes up, we won't add anything to that, right?
it? Yeah.
Stick to the tour.
I think that's a pretty focused agenda. We should.
But after,
And then just a heads up, I think we're meeting the 4th Tuesday of each month in the future. Is that the schedule?
That's the,
council's on the 4th, and we'll
Look.
meet on the 5th, and then we'll plan to meet again on the 25th
Okay.
to stay on our 4th Tuesday.
Okay. That sounds great.
And Devin seemed like that would be okay for the budgeting meeting.
now
That would be the budget meeting.
Now that we've set that, 25th happens to be our 40th anniversary. We will not be, we will not be here.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
So, thank you. So, we haven't confirmed this, but I'm believing that the 27th might be a more valid date. Does that work? That's a Thursday? Is that going to create issues?
The 25th doesn't work?
25th will not work for me.
Not work for you,
I
okay.
did not have that item on my account.
I mean, you could probably do Tuesday the 18th. then. If you want to move it out.
No,
No?
I try to keep it that week.
That
Just so I have time to review with staff that policy that I gotta create.
Could you put out an email maybe? So I don't have my schedule on me here. I have it at my work, so
Put out a what?
put out a email to us for scheduling for the next, whatever the dates are. I don't have my schedule on me.
So we're suggesting either the 18th or the 27th?
I think
And the
Michael, you
18th
said the.
is too
Well,
early for
18th
you?
is-
I'd rather stay on that
Yeah.
same week, the 27th.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the 27th, I'm good, so.
I'm more than likely good for the 27th too, but I can confirm it tomorrow.
It pretty much is just, if it's going to be the budget meeting on the 25th, staff will pretty much have it prepared with the narratives.
So you want to do
You're gonna have another opportunity to go through the narratives again at the next council meeting. Maybe, if you get most of it, we've had, the chairman would come in prior to the meeting anyhow. And maybe before you leave, Michael could go through the budget with you, just of what he's thinking and what he's gonna ask for. And then as long as we have Sarah and Paul here, we should be fine for the 25th. Because you're going to either, we'll be recommending it to council. That's all.
That's up to Jim. If you want to just skip out, we can handle it.
Yeah.
if you're not comfortable with that.
That's,
Let-
the problem is that I learn more questions that I should be asking.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
I like the interplay.
Well, why don't you just let everyone else know if the 27th works?
Let's see if that works.
The 27th of September. it would
2
be-
days delay.
It'll be a Thursday, I believe.
Works for me.
I think it's probably gonna work for me, so I would say let's, if that's what the chair prefers, I think we should go with that.
See if we can do that. You know,
So you'll be here on the 27th?
Yeah,
Okay.
just push it 2 days back.
Okay. 27th is September.
do we have any other meetings?
Yeah,
that we're
there might be, but
competing
if,
with?
you know, if there's another meeting, I guess we'll have to meet somewhere else.
Meet upstairs too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the next meeting will be the 27th, after the 5th.
Other topics that we need to talk about. We have one that we need to, I've been crafting an answer back to you and then I lost it. I didn't save it.
Okay.
Because it's fairly complex.
Yes.
But trying to sort out what, you know, the issues that are policy and procedures. And
Right, it's another procedural issue, and Deb, were we looking for a date?
For which one?
For some policy and procedures about maintenance.
Oh, you sent the.
So we'll get on that with the city attorney, and then
Yep.
we'll start talking about it, and then we'll get it on an agenda. If it's not in September, it'll have to be October.
Okay. Good. So we're moving ahead with it. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the important thing. Anything else?
Nope.
I would move to adjourn.
I would second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.